Hello everybody, Primitive Mycology here again, and today is volume 2 of our um, straw bag grows with oyster mushrooms. I haven't put a lot of thought into this video, just kind of documenting and showing you guys how easy this is. The previous video, volume 1, was the basic preparation and the idea behind the soak and ferment of your straw with hydrated lime in order to kind of what many people call cold water pasteurized, which is that's not scientifically, that's not actually what's happening. What you're actually doing is you are eliminating a bunch of competitors and making your substrate suitable for the mycelium to grow in and fruit. Anyways, if you missed the last video, by all means go back. I'm not going to waste too much of your time here. Today we are just draining. We're going to get our straw that's fermented now for I think 5 days. We're going to get it into other buckets draining, get it covered up, let it get down to the point that it's field capacity, and the following video will be inoculation and preparation where they're going to be hung. This is the absolute simplest project. I wanted to make a video that goes into stuff that someone that's never done this can do. You don't need a flow hood. You don't need anything spectacular. You can actually, going to go ahead and have me a seat here. You can actually order in spawn, if you don't have the ability to make it. Mossy Creek mushrooms, North spore, main cap and stem. Those are places that regularly, produce spawn for other people. There's a whole lot of other places that, produce liquid cultures. Some produce spawn. And I've got different things from many different companies, but if you're a beginner and, you don't understand the process, or you don't have the ability or the time, again, Mossy Creek, North spore, or main cap and stem is a great place to get spawn from. Also, something that I've found is, although grain spawn works great for these, sawdust spawn works quite well too. So like a fruiting block, I don't know if I would go just sawdust spawn, because the straw is much lower nutrition already than what a fruiting block would be. It's definitely going to grow, but performance wise, instead of like sawdust spawn, which would work, buying a fruiting block kit and breaking that up fresh, not already used or fruited, into your straw, your straw bags, really works really well. That the soy hulls and the supplementation in the block, plus the extra mass that you have, gives you more to spread throughout your straw. I frequently will make blocks on purpose to do this with. This time around, tomorrow when we inoculate, it'll be just grain spawn this time, which works very well too. I've just noticed a real difference in the turnaround and the return rate. Instead of being like success rate at, with stuff like this, if you hit 70% as a beginner, you're doing pretty good. This is like the most basic, almost no prep, very little, you got to be clean, you got to be as sanitary as you can, but you're outside, you're not sterilizing or actually pasteurizing your material. But this works, using the fruiting blocks, though, the consistency can be well upwards around like 80%. If you were to do the same process and steam pasteurize a straw or boil it and do this inside in like still air boxes, or a really still room with no vents or anything on, nobody coming through, the room very clean, you could probably definitely hit like 80 to 90% with a little practice, which for what it is actually really good. You know, I'm with like sterilized fruiting blocks, you know, 90 to 95% is that's pretty good. Um, I'm happy at that. If you know 1 out of 20 blocks, you know, maybe an issue with the bag or something happens, or just any number of things. 1 out of 20 goes bad. It's like, that's, you know, needs to be found out why. Why did that happen? But it's not anything to fret about. Um, but that takes equipment and time and experience and everything else. And we're going to get into this right now, just how easy this is. So my buckets here, I have pre-rinsed these um, and scrubbed them out with a rag. I've got a little bit of 10% bleach water that I am going to mist them down with and give them a good wipe before I drain the straw into them. Obviously, there will be no bleach left behind, but you want to have a clean vessel to start with. You don't want to be like immediately introducing and trapping your substrate in there with any more contaminants than what you have to, you know, because face it, outside like this, there are going to be contaminants, you know, and that's okay. You know, mycelium is notoriously good, and it's used to, you know, competing with other organisms in the wild. Some cultures that you get, they, you know, some cultures just don't compete well with other organisms, and that's usually what makes them not commercially viable. Sometimes really pretty stuff to grow, but, you know, requires a lot of babysitting. With stuff like this outside, I try to stick to stuff like Pleurotus columbinus, Pleurotus dijamor, Citrino pileatus, the yellow oyster, blue, you know, blue oyster, pink oyster. Pulmonarius does real well like this. The brown, you know, summer oyster. They're like super aggressive and competitive, and will fruit in a variety of conditions. The pink and the yellow oyster, being warmer weather mushrooms, this time of year will grow, but they don't do nearly as well as they would, you know, mid or late summer, you know, like, or you know, late spring. Basically, you know, when you're like lows in the, you know, the 60s, 50s, 60s, and then highs 70s and 80s, the pinks and the yellows just absolutely thrive. The pinks will grow up in the 90s with no issues. The golden oyster, yellow oyster, I found that like they will grow at them high temperatures, but they really start to fall off for me with the culture I have. It could be different for you. But they really start to fall off around like 85 degrees. They start producing some like subpar, like spongy mushrooms, and that's not, you know, rather, I would just rather not at that point. I'm sure that there's other cultures and, you know, probably other environments in which they may do better after that, but this time of year anyway, I'm, you know, try to stick to Columbinus and Pulmonarius to do really well this time of year. Gonna mess around a little bit with Horicium on straw and see what it does, lion's mane. I'd be interested to see if there's enough nutrition and, you know, how that goes outside like that. Never grown it on straw, so we got to this year. There's also shiitake strains that have been bred and developed to grow specifically on straw, been trained to grow on straw, which once you learn to do your own lab work, you can train any culture, any culture to eat almost anything. You just, it's a slow introduction, and, you know, consistently keeping it on certain types of supplemented media, whether it's, you know, boiled straw water that you make your agar with, and, you know, you would start out with, you know, just a few drops in your regular media. Just make your media the exact way you normally do. Put a couple drops out of a dropper from your boiled straw water in there, and just run like, instead of pouring 100 plates at a time, just pour like 5 like that. Just do like, a little 125 milliliter um, Erlenmeyer flask and just do like half of that, fill it half full. You got to do some math to get your ratios, proper back to, your 2 to 2.5% nutrition rate. But um, that slow introduction, you run a couple plates like that with a culture. Then you pick the one that grew, that responded the best to it, and you pour another batch of 5 that instead of having just a couple drops, you put 2 milliliters of that same boiled straw water. Obviously you would strain it. You can also, take and cut straw really fine or put a little bit like your food processor and just absolute puree it, dry, and then add like, half a gram to your agar mix. And you could achieve the same thing, but, it's like a slower introduction where you steadily increase the amount up until you're basically using like in a 500 milliliter batch of, agar media where, you're using like 100 milliliters of that straw water, and you would have to, using that much, you would want to reduce whatever your carbohydrate source is a little bit. Um, like if here lately I've been using oatmeal, making flour with it, pulsing it in the food processor, turn it into flour, and then using it rather than like light malt extract or potato dextrose. Well, that oatmeal, instead of doing, you know, uh, 6 grams of that and then 4 grams of dextrose, with 1 gram of nutritional yeast, that gives you like, right at 2%. I mean, you could go up a little bit. 3% is like 13 and a half. So if you wanted to go like 11 and a half grams, you'd be around 2.5%. Adding 100 milliliters of that straw water, I would reduce that, the oatmeal, probably by like 2 grams. Is that going to be perfect ratio or the exact? No, but it's going to be close because, you get into them higher nutrition plates, like so many people like to pour at like 3 and 4%. I've known people to pour plates at 5% nutrition. That's like, you can, but to me that makes just 0 sense, unless you're like trying to shock, or like maybe you could cause like a mutation if you run it on extreme high nutrients, but you also might cause it to have like enzyme blindness, or something. I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but that it seems to me like, forcing too much nutrition, like in a constant state of, um, in vitro growth, would not. I don't think that would be good for your culture. Short, one transfer to one run of plates that's like a 4%, and then back to your normal 2. Um, that that may have other effects where you may kind of like wake something back up, that you're having problems with. Um, I've taken cultures that were out of long-term storage that were old, like, 2, 3 years old. I think the oldest one I took out of long-term storage was like 4 years old. And I've gotten one in the mail before from somebody that was like 10 plus years old in a cryovial of sterile water, long-term water storage rather than a slant. Slants can probably last, up to that long too if you know how to properly revive them. But it just didn't want to grow, putting it out on new plates. And I made one batch of the only media that I ever go high nutrition, which is for cordyceps. They're absolute nutrition whores. And I run my cordyceps media, which is at like 4%, which is always entirely, I don't ever put anything on it, but just to see, because I thought the culture had died. I got a little tiny bit of growth finally after like 2 weeks. It was like a little 1/2 inch ring around it where it had started to, try to go, and subcultured that, put it back on, normal 2% nutrition plates, and it woke up, it started growing again. I don't know the exact science or the biology that occurred there. I still don't quite understand that because I haven't had enough old revivals like that that were problematic to really, you know, really say definitively. So like, please don't like quote me on that, or you know, try it and say, oh, it didn't work, you know, because everything is circumstantial. That's just my experience. Anyways, I am going to stop wasting your time, and I'm going to give these one more mist. Man, a lot of traffic today. One more mist with the bleach water. And I'm going to leave it to soak in 2 of them. I'm going to spray my rag a little bit here, just to hopefully kind of kill some of the surface garbage on it. And with this, you know, normally after you sanitize something, you know, you don't reintroduce anything else to it, because you're unsanitizing it at that point. But I just want to kill what's in here, because this is going to be outside anyway, you know, draining. It's not like it's going to be perfect, but I just want to do the best I can for what it is, you know. So I'm going to go ahead and rinse it just so there's not a bunch of bleach water in there, and it's going to be, you know, fairly clean. There we are. Oh yeah, the straw has definitely been fermenting. You can smell it pretty clearly. I washed my hands before I started, but I'm just going to give them a shot with the bleach water, just, you know, to be sure that they're kind of clean, you know, as clean as you can be outside. You can see in the broth from this that it's all like, you know, bubbly from the starting to ferment and everything, and that's a good sign. That's what you want, you know. Yeah, we're just going to load into this bucket. And then what I do, after I get this stuff loaded in here, is I cover it with a trash bag, just to minimize things that can fall on the top, you know, like, does it really matter that it's perfectly clean? For this process, no, you know. But we also don't want like every spore on the planet blowing through the air falling on the top of this, you know. So we'll just keep it simple, kind of pack it in here. And what I like to do with the bit that's left in the bottom, if it was tea, you would call it the dregs, is I will leave it in the bucket like this until the end. And then I will, when I go to do my next bucket, I will dump it in the bottom first, just because I just spent the time, you know, picking this straw up by my hands. Because if you go to pour a solid lump of straw out of the bucket, it comes out in like a big clump that, you know, will splash, and you'll end up with that, you know, fermented straw water on your clothes. You know, as well as, I think we'll do this the other way. No, sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. We need the holes in the bottom to drain it. So yeah, we're just going to drape her over it and set it to the side. Go ahead, rinse the lid here. And see if, you know, if all my buckets were like that, you know, I could just use the lids, you know, whatever. But my nicer buckets, I don't want to drill a bunch of holes in. You know, I just use old ones and clean them out well. You know, makes a little more sense to me. So we'll go ahead and get this next one wiped down. Remember, we already misted it with bleach. Give it a good wipe. And actually, I'll bring this up to the camera to kind of show you. Okay, so this is how, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. This bucket's been used so many times for stuff like this, also for like fermenting wood chips. You know, I just make sure that there's enough holes that it'll drain. Yeah, I mean, like, it doesn't have to be perfect. There's no science to it. It's just drill holes, let drain, you know, that simple. Sorry, excuse me, my allergies are a little messed up with everybody harvesting. And see the start of this, and I wish I had a way to show you the color. Like, it's a deep amber color. Actually, I can by putting it in the side a little bit. See if I can get it up where the camera can see it. See that? The you know, the fermented broth that comes off of that. You know, at the end of this, I'm going to save a little bit of this. I'm going to get, you know, probably like a pint jar of it and save it. Even though it's had hydrated lime and everything in it, the fermentation process brings the pH, you know, back closer, not too neutral, but closer to neutral. You know, where it's not going to be as high a pH. That way you wouldn't be shocking your mycelium if you made some plates with it. But naturally, you know, with a broth like that, I would put it in a glass or a jar initially, but then it's going to go into a pan on the stove, and I'm going to boil it and allow it to kind of reduce a little bit. You know, reducing it, you know, to kind of concentrate it, really kind of makes it a little safer to store. And if you're going to store something like that after you boil it, I would freeze it. You could also, you know, throw it in the PC. You could throw it in the PC and sterilize it, you know, for like 30-40 minutes. You know, I would go an hour for like LC or agar, but to get your initial kill done, you could do that, you know, like just flip your lid upside down and don't tighten your ring, cover it with foil, let it do its thing for 30 minutes. As it cools, you know, when it's still hot, but you can handle it after it's, you know, the pressure's equalized when you're done, flip your lid over, put your ring on, but don't go tight, just barely snug it. And as it cools the rest of the way, it'll vacuum your lid down. And then when it cools completely, throw it in the freezer or the fridge, you know. Even though you've sterilized it and that, if you're gonna, you know, something like that, you only need like super small amounts at a time, you know, doing media like that and stuff, you know, for like training and culture. So it's going to last like quite some time, you know, and light and heat. Those are the things that degrade, you know, that's what degrades your, you know, the nutrients and just the whole profile of that, you know, just kind of like storing tinctures, or when you, you know, extract into oils and stuff, you know, you don't want it exposed to direct sunlight and stuff like that if you're going to store long term. I mean, you can do what you want, but, you know, that's just my general, you know, that's how I approach it. You know, I just throw it in the freezer, and when I know I'm going to pour media and want to use a little bit of it, you know, for a couple extra plates or something, or occasionally I'll purposely run like an entirely different media, not just change one thing a little bit between batches to, you know, to keep the mycelium developing other enzymes. You know, I think I went in one of my other videos why that is beneficial to rotate medias. You don't have to every batch. You know, I pour batches, you know, usually of 100 plates. I don't really want to get everything out if I'm going to pour less than that, because I often, you know, I can go through a lot of plates. I'm always doing little projects and stuff, but, you know, also I store them well. And, you know, I have a very extremely high success rate, you know, pouring plates. Everybody, occasionally, I don't care how long you've done this, if you're afraid to admit that you've had a botched agar pour, that means you either aren't truthful or you haven't done this enough yet. It's just one of them things, you know, all of us, I can pour 100 plates every other week for a year or two. And then, boom, all of a sudden, you know, something minuscule will go awry. Or maybe I get a bad sleeve of plates that weren't totally sterile when I got them. Or, you know, maybe my media flask I had one time that there was a crack in the flask that I didn't know about. How it happened, I don't know. Erlenmeyer flasks are pretty tough, you know, but I did manage to do it, and I didn't realize that. Well, it didn't burst in the PC because, you know, I don't tighten my lids completely on ones that aren't vented, and the ones I do want to tighten the lid completely on, I drill a hole, and I micropore tape the top so it can vent, because I'm sure, you know, if you've used, I often use like the borosilicate glass actual media bottles. I used to use the small Crown Royal bottles. They work extremely well, super good glass, and they're really meant to pour. They're flat, you know, kind of flattish on the one side. Oh man, they're great. If they were just a little bigger, I'd probably never use a media bottle again. To be completely honest, you know, I really was attached to them and still use them for some little smaller batches. But for the most part, though, like your lids, it comes with you know, the twist-on lid, and they have a seal, you know, a really heavy polypropylene seal at the top, for a good reason. But you know, you can actually tighten them all the way. Most people leave them cracked back just a little bit. You can actually tighten them all the way, and the good ones, they won't burst in the PC. But that's just not a very, in my opinion, not a very intelligent practice. That's a good way to bust them. Also a good way to pull them out and let them cool. And during the cooling, the vacuum will get that lid so tight, sometimes you can't get it off. Or like you're cranking on it so hard, you're totally contaminating it, you know, while you're cranking and acting a fool. That is definitely a learning experience that I went through at one point. And I see that the camera is cutting off my head. Not that I think you guys care. Anyways, you're getting to see this process. It's really simple. But back to the media flask like that. They, you know, if you're not gonna drill a hole to vent your lid, you know, you normally want to leave it cracked a little bit. And you know, when you do that, you're allowing, you know, the pressure to equalize without bursting it. Or one time I left it cracked, cooked my batch of agar, got it out, set it in front of the flow hood to cool. And you know, when you first pull it out, you got to tighten it so it don't, you know, through convection suck in a shit ton of dirty air. I've actually, one time I made a mistake like that and I forgot to tighten it. And rather than set it in front of the flow hood to cool, I set it beside it because I had like 4 other bottles to pour, and I forgot to tighten one. Well, it sat there, and it was the last bottle I poured and had plenty of time to suck in little particles, you know, the things that are in everyone's air everywhere. Hence the reason we use a flow hood. Anyways, though, you know, because of that, it slowly sat through me pouring all of the bottles of media. And I poured 500 milliliters of bad plates. They all had little tiny spots of yeast. That whole stack. So then I was like constantly monitoring all the rest of the plates until I figured out what happened there. You know, wondering, are they all going to go bad? You know, you don't want to subculture to a plate that could go bad. Most generally, I let mine sit for 3 days before I even wrap them. But I put them in really good gasketed waterproof tubs that, you know, just don't allow anything to come in. That also, doing that will help to equalize everything in there, and your plates won't be foggy. Let them sit in there for a few days while you make sure that you had, you know, a good run.
everything will equalize and all your plates will be crystal clear. Occasionally, you might get one or two that still have a couple water droplets, but usually 3 days and they're like perfect plates. I'll leave them in front of the flow hood long enough to set properly, because you go moving them too early and you'll have like wavy parts in your plates, or you might, they might slosh, or, who knows what, um, but anyways, yeah, putting them in there like that um, gives you a chance to really see what it's going to do. And for a while, I wasn't wrapping them at all. Just a short amount of time. Before that, I always wrapped them when they were ready to put away. And then I wasn't wrapping them all, just leaving them in them tubs, and they wouldn't never contaminate in the tub, but eventually they would start to dry out a little bit. And then like the last 20 plates out of your 100 kind of suck. So I, figured out the in between, um, and that's like 3 days of waiting and observing, not wasting a bunch of parafilm and the time to wrap them, and then, um, getting them wrapped and, sealing in their moisture where they don't dry out and shit. But also, I had some plates sometimes, because the tub is large that I use to store plates in, because I have other stuff, other kind of plates and stuff that I pour for specific other things, where sometimes I might have 300 plates total, or if somebody wants some plates from me, and I pour them, 200 plates, they got to sit and I have to observe them before I give them to them, because I would never, ever give someone bad plates like that. That would be so embarrassing. Um, Especially if they're like new to mycology and they get these plates and they all shit the bed and they're like, why is it, am I not using the still air box? What, am I not sterilizing the scalpel right? Like, what's going on? Why are all my transfers turning bad? And like, at that point, they don't know if it's their technique, if they're really new, they may not know, like, if their culture is started out good or not, and then they have all these fucking bad plates and they're like, yep, done with that, just spent that money on these plates, and here we are now, they're all going bad, I can't do this, or whatever. There's so many people that quit for so many reasons. I would hate to be the reason. um so anyways, I have large tubs like that, and those large ones, when I have a whole bunch of stuff I'm working on in front of the flow hood already, I just leave that tub beside me with, the lid not latched, and I just reach in and grab 3 or 4 plates when I need it, wipe them down in front of the flow hood, and I'm good to go. Well, doing that enough times, I've had, with the unwrapped plates in there, slowly them start, going bad from the constant exposure, and opening the lid and the vacuum that creates all the air it sucks in, closing the lid, same thing, had plates start going bad. So as much as I hate wrapping plates, I wrap them now in 3 days. Anyways, I guess you're getting kind of a rant from me as I do this shit. You've seen the process though. I got one more to do, but this bucket that I poured the dregs in has to drain, and I need to go get a jar to jar up some of this broth. And then in a few days or something, I'll make a video going over how I actually reduce and pour this media to strains specifically to each certain things. I might even do one where I rake up a bunch of leaves, blast them in the food processor, and then extract them and use them. Stuff like that works good when you're going to use outdoor beds and stuff. Does it really, do you have to? No, not at all. It's just like an entertaining, little scientific exploration, I guess you could say. Citizen science, to me, it's fun. You guys probably don't care. You probably don't even want to hear me talk about all this shit. And I don't care, because it's my channel and I'll do what I want. So anyways, y'all have a great fucking day. I'm gonna finish up this last little bit. These basically, they need to drain like probably 12 hours at the least, being as it's kind of chilly outside. It's like, I don't know, fucking 40s or something, maybe 50 degrees for a high. It's getting down in the 30s at night. This might take maybe 24 hours because of that, but